Hey guys, how you doing? So I wanted to do something a little bit different today. I wanted to talk to you guys about a movie I saw and give you kind of a little bit of a movie review, I guess, because I thought that this particular movie was really great. But there's a few caveats concerned, and I want to kind of let you guys know what you're getting into and kind of prepare you for it. I feel like it's the kind of movie that you have to be in the right mindset to see. So earlier in the week, I went to the Alamo Draft House in Austin, Texas, and I saw Lords of Chaos, which is essentially about mayhem and the Black Circle and the original Norwegian true black metal scene of the early 90s. A lot of what is detailed in the movie and also the title of the movie is taken from the book of the same name by Michael Moynihan and Didrik Soderlund. And as you can see, details the bloody rise of the satanic metal underground, which, take that with a grain of salt. It is coming from an outsider's perspective, someone who is just reporting on what information that they are finding. Be that as it may, that's also something that you need to take into account when going into this movie. Now, there's a lot of people that will tell you, oh, they're going to fuck it up because it's a metal movie and it's being made by normies. Here's the thing. It's being made by Jonas Ekerlund, who, as you may or may not know, is the former original drummer of the band Bathory, that awesome prototypical black metal group from way back in the day that put out all those great kick-ass albums like the self-titled record and Bloodfire Death and that sort of stuff. So he was, of course, in the band way before any of that happened, but there's still a certain degree of metal pedigree at play here. If there's anyone that we can trust to treat the subject matter with some sort of respect and reverence, I would think it would be this guy. There's also been a lot of controversy, people portrayed in the movie or people that are talked about in the movie didn't really have too much of a say in it. And although there's definitely a lot of that from many years back when the idea of this movie being made was first being brought out, it's been kind of talked about recently that no, Euronymous' parents had a lot to do with it. Mayhem themselves had a fair amount to do with it. Attila's son actually plays him in the movie. Granted, it's just for a few short moments, but all the same, you've got some metal pedigree here. From what I've read on the subject, a few of the actors were even actual fans before they got involved. You know, guys like Jack Kilmer, son of Val Kilmer, who plays Dead in the movie. He's actually a fan of black metal and really wanted to portray this character. That's really cool. Now, going into this, though, one other thing you have to understand is that the subject matter, the source material that this movie is based on, there's a lot of conflicting reports. You'll find certain things portrayed in the movie, like certain acts, certain events, certain people, that there can be like two people involved with the exact same act or event who will tell about it two completely different ways. And I think reading the original book and also reading a lot of interviews from around that time period, and even more current interviews with the likes of Fenriz and Bard and Varg even, you know, it's something where you can kind of figure out that, hey, there's a lot of he said, she said going on. There's a lot of, this person was an asshole. No, this person was scary. No, this person was a poser. No, this person was a scene figurehead. There's a lot of things that just don't align. So one of the things that the filmmakers took on was the challenge of that. The director, production team, and the cast had to figure out a way to make believable characters out of all this conflicting source material. And I thought they did an awesome job because what they somehow figured out and managed to do was not necessarily find a middle ground, but instead they were able to make it so that every character was everything that everyone said they were. And that is one thing you need to remember. Yeah, the characters are believable. Yeah, some of the acting is a little questionable. Some of the casting choices are a little bit questionable. But I think a lot of the casting choices were more so intentional, not necessarily to portray these characters in a negative light, but more to show that they were such conflicted human beings in the first place. First billed actor Rory Culkin, for example, who played Euronymous, Oysten Arseth. We're talking about a guy who, yeah, there's a certain amount of acting pedigree in his family, but this is a dude who honestly comes off as your typical young adult actor. You've seen one, you've seen them all. He's got that kind of weird thing in his voice, kind of like what I got, where it never quite fully broke after he hit puberty. So there's a kind of youthfulness about the way he handles himself, the way he speaks. And in my opinion, that only makes the character of Euronymous being this conflicted individual. Yeah, he saw himself as a seen figurehead. He was maybe a little bit arrogant, maybe a little paranoid, maybe a little in over his head, maybe a little bit scared of what repercussions might happen from this sort of persona that he tried to portray himself as. I think that casting Rory Culkin in that role was a great idea, and it actually came out really, really well. Same thing goes for Emery Cohen in the role of Varg Vikernes. I think that this was an extremely conflicted individual who kind of maybe originally came into the scene, yeah, probably as this sort of perceived poser, but eventually the student kind of overtook the master in the way he's portrayed in the film. That he's all of a sudden this seen figurehead because he's true and he's actually doing these acts that he talks about. And he's kind of at odds with the fact that the person who keeps trying to make himself the seen figurehead is this guy who's not really standing up to what he believes in according to the character. There again, not saying this is what I believe, but this is what I'm saying it's kind of portrayed as in the film. I think that was a rather great take on the character, on the fucking human being. Because let's be honest, it is a biopic. You had the source material, you had to figure out how to portray these characters because they were actual living, breathing human beings. Not some made-up work of fiction, but actual, conflicted, problematic people. And how best to portray them is the challenge that any good actor, any director, any production team goes into a biopic thinking about how to make it. Now, taking all of that into account, I thought the movie was rather awesome. For the most part. I'm going to get to that in a minute. I thought that the portrayal of the characters was great. I love the set pieces. I love the record shop. I thought that was really well done and it truly captured the vibe of some of those kick-ass metal underground record shops that you sometimes find. The churches that would end up getting burned for the sake of furthering the Black Circle's agenda. I thought the cinematography was pretty good. It definitely had that sort of B-movie character to it, very independent movie character to it. And in that, I thought that it was just extremely entertaining and extremely enjoyable. One caveat for sure I would give though, and I've told a few of my friends this already, I'm not going to scream it loud and proud from the heavens. Act 1 was crap, okay? So I hate to say it, but you kind of have to wait until you get to the point where Dead kills himself, and then all of a sudden the movie takes off. You know, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding that scene because it is extremely graphic with how he chooses to commit suicide, and he's doing all these things to kind of get the act done, and then finally blows his head off. I thought that was kind of the point in the movie where it all of a sudden became incredibly engrossing. Up until that point, there was a lot of problems I felt partially with the cinematography and with the editing of that first act, where to me, I think if anything screams studio involvement, it's that first act. Like the vibe I got was, okay, we need to get this movie down to a certain runtime. So where can we shorten this up? And it was just decided to shorten it up in the first act. That is truly the vibe that I get from it. It's just kind of awful the way that it goes into this kind of like origin story of like, hey, I'm Oyston. Hey, this is my band, etc. Then it just proceeds to get into this sort of like metalhead partying thing. Like, oh God, it was so fucking cringe. For literally the first 20 minutes, I was seriously like, was it a good idea to even come see this movie? And then as soon as the singer shot himself, hey, it was awesome. So I don't want to say too much more for fear of ruining it for you guys or spoiling certain things. But just remember, you have to go into this movie with the right mindset. Right at the beginning of the movie, there's a title screen that says this movie is based upon truth, on lies, and on what actually happened. And I feel that is a great dig on the source material because there again, you had a lot of situations where you had two people who may have been involved even in the same conversation who perceived it two completely different ways and recounted it two completely different ways. It's like that meme that you always see online of like two guys are looking at a number on the ground. One guy says it's a 6, one guy says it's a 9. It's the exact same concept. The only thing is that this was real fucking life. So how do we figure out how to depict this on the big screen? And I gotta give props to Jonas Akerlund and the production team and the cast because I thought they did a really, really fantastic job. I'd give this movie like a 7 out of 10, and only because that first act was awful. If you take that away, or if you were probably make an extended director's cut where you put back in whatever like 15 to 20 minutes was edited out to make that so short and so blech, I'll bet you this movie would be a solid 8.5, 9 out of 10. I really, really loved it. I would love to see it again. My wife would even tell you she's not exactly the biggest fan of black metal, but even she would tell you that she loved the movie too. I thought it was extremely entertaining, and as a metalhead, I really enjoyed it.